What's good, guys? Welcome back, welcome, etc. I noticed none of you watched my mystery recommendations video, by the way. I'm just messing around. I know that you guys are here for Animorphs. I am gonna keep diversifying the channel, but this series is gonna remain my main focus until I'm done recapping the series, at least, so, you know, a long time. Anyway, if you didn't know already, this is where I recap and review every single book in the Animorphs series, mostly in order, except for when I forget the Megamorphs books, which I'm gonna get to at some point. I feel like it may be kind of unfair to evaluate them using the same standard as I've been using for the core books, because their narrative structure is just so different. Let me know if you have an opinion either way. I'm gonna figure out what I'm doing about that soon-ish. So in this video, we will be talking about the reaction. This is the 12th book in this series, and surprise, surprise, this is not one of my favorites. We'll see if that changes after this reread. The front cover quote is "Trust no one," which again could be on any Animorphs cover, and the inside cover quote is "Nothing like a crocodile's smile." Here are two pieces of trivia. Number one, the character of Jeremy Jason McCole, the teen heartthrob, is a parody of Jonathan Taylor Thomas, and the Barry and Cindy Sue show is a parody of Live with Regis and Kathy Lee. The second piece of trivia is that in this book, Cassie mentions that she told her mother that NIN stands for nice is neat, so that her mom would let her buy the new Nine Inch Nails album. However, at the time that this book came out, Nine Inch Nails hadn't released an album in a few years. I choose to believe that this inclusion was KA's attempt to manifest a new Nine Inch Nails album, meaning that they must be fans. There is a TV episode of the show that is directly adapted from this book, and it is nonsensical and full of needless plot consolidations and changes, but I will be including footage from it anyway. Just understand that, as usual, it probably will not exactly match the plot points of the book. For instance, they made it so that Cassie, for some reason, is the one allergic to the alligator morph. Sorry for the spoiler, I'm sure you guys have read this book before. Let's just get into it. Also, if you like these videos, I never say this, like and subscribe. It would be helpful. I'm trying to get 1,000 subs by my birthday. That would be a wonderful birthday present. My birthday is July 1st, so, you know, bear that in mind. So there is no cold open in this book. The first chapter drops us right into the "My name is Rachel yeerk invasion" debrief. This includes all of the usual stuff, but it also has a bit where Rachel talks about how, while her friends think that she is fearless, she actually has a lot of fear, but that being brave isn't not being afraid, it's about being scared to death and still not giving in. I know what you guys are thinking. I googled it while writing this script. Game of Thrones actually came out in 1996. This book came out in 1997, so unfortunately Ned Stark did not lift his little bravery catchphrase from Rachel. Also of note is that in this introduction, Rachel gives us a little information on the scope of the invasion. Rachel says that the yeerks have infested hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of humans. It's pretty vague, pretty broad, and I think that it's safe to say that the yeerks have not infested a million humans at this point, but thousands sounds about right to me. Rachel tells the reader about voluntary controllers and states that she's always wondered what it would take to get someone to betray their species and planet like that, and hints that we're about to find out as the plot of the book unfolds. In the first scene of the book, the gang is on a field trip with school, and they are going to the gardens where Cassie's mom is going to give a little presentation. Cassie and Rachel are chatting, and Cassie is worried that her mom is going to have a hello fellow kids moment and drop some bad names into the conversation. You know, like the Fudgies and Snoop Diggity Dog and Boys 11 Men, or the aforementioned Nice is Neat. I appreciate Cassie's eclectic and respectable taste in music, although apparently she only got the Nine Inch Nails album so that she could burn a copy for Marco. Do you guys remember the CD burning days? So as the two walk along, Rachel and Cassie, the two, they notice a little kid climbing over the railing into the crocodile pit. Rachel yells at him to get down, even as he slips and falls over the edge, landing among the crocodiles. Cassie runs off to get her mom, imploring Rachel to not do anything until she gets back, but we know Rachel is a woman of action. She jumps into the pit after the boy, where she is promptly attacked by a crocodile. She acquires the crocodile in order to subdue it, and then she finds the boy, who is on the ground unconscious. She notices that while she acquired the crocodile, she felt weirdly sick. Rachel then maneuvers herself and the boy so that they are out of view of the spectating crowd, and then she morphs the crocodile, fights the original crocodile, wins, and then tells the boy, who is awake at this point, in thought speak, to hop on her back. There's our security breach for this episode, thank you. I mean, the whole situation honestly is a security breach, but I guess there weren't cameras everywhere in the 90s like they are today. Anyway, Rachel lets the boy ride her to some rocks where he is able to climb to safety, and then she quickly demorphs before the zoo employees show up. No harm done. Why would there be? Later, the gang is in Cassie's barn, and guess what? Jake is yelling at Rachel for being reckless. We get a description of all of the Animorphs at this point, with Rachel pointing out that if they were to vote on a leader, Jake would get every vote except for his own. Something critical to a good leader, in lots of people's opinion, not just mine. Rachel also states that Marco is cute, which of course we already know, and that Cassie is the most capable, in-charge person Rachel has ever met, which we also know, but which I'm highlighting because it's true, and because it reinforces my newly discovered appreciation for Cassie. It's not even newly discovered at this point. I'm on like year 2 of Cassie love. Anyway, Jake is going off on Rachel when Tobias privately tells her to ask Jake what he would have done in her place. Rachel does so, and this diffuses Jake's anger pretty quickly. With the yelling out of the way, Jake lets the group know that the teenage heartthrob Jeremy Jason McCole, whom we will be referring to as JJ for the sake of brevity in this video, is going to be the new spokesperson for the sharing. Cassie and Rachel are very upset by this news, which the other Animorphs brush off as them just being teenage girls, before Rachel points out that if a teen idol like JJ starts endorsing the sharing, it may help the yeerks recruit members of his fan base, which is pretty big. Cassie equates it to a member of Baywatch endorsing the sharing, which finally makes Marco, Jake, and Tobias understand. With that, the gang decides that they've got to do something about this Jeremy Jason McCole character. That night, Rachel is watching some show starring JJ with her sister. We'll say that it's probably the in-universe version of Seventh Heaven. And Rachel tests her theory from earlier by asking her sister what she would do if there were a club that would let her meet JJ. Her sister immediately asks what club and where she can sign up, validating Rachel's concern. Later, Rachel does some research on the internet and finds out that JJ is going to be on a local talk show in a couple of days. She starts to get all hot and bothered thinking about JJ, but quickly realizes that she's a little too bothered and that something is wrong before she looks down and sees that her hand is green. Without trying to, and without being able to stop, she is morphing Crocodile. As Rachel worries about accidentally eating her family, the Crocodile morph abruptly stops and she somehow starts morphing directly into Ant. And I find it fun to know that it is possible to go directly from one morph to the next. I bet Cassie could figure out how to do it if she didn't have to spend all of her time fighting the yeerks and being in school. Anyway, Rachel's weird morphing seizure continues until she winds up morphing Elephant and falling through the floor of her bedroom into her kitchen down below. Fortunately, she then regains control of herself and is able to demorph before her family runs into the kitchen to find out what has happened. Rachel's mom insists that she go to the ER, and somehow the media finds out that Rachel fell through her floor and decides that this is a newsworthy event since it's the same girl who fell into the crocodile pit, dubbing her the amazing falling girl. Once the dust has settled, Rachel is left with her family in the hospital bed. Rachel's dad shows up and Rachel points out that her parents only use this fake nice voice with each other. A nice little detail that I'm sure is relatable to many kids. Good job, KA. Rachel's dad is some type of news reporter and he offers to use his clout to stave off some of the media who want to report on the amazing falling girl. Rachel sees an opportunity here and she asks her dad if maybe if she does one talk show, then the reporters will leave her all alone because they'll have gotten what they wanted. I am not 100% sure that it works this way, but it works for the plot, so we will leave this one be. Long story short, Rachel is able to play the teenage fangirl and convince her dad to pull some strings and get her a spot on the same show that JJ will be interviewed on in a few days. I am 1000% sure that this is not how media bookings work, but that is all that I'm going to say about that. I don't know anything. I am a YouTuber. So Rachel goes back to her dad's hotel after she's done at the hospital, and there's this very funny scene where she orders room service and says that she'll have a salad and a cheeseburger and fries and to cancel the salad and a milkshake. Cassie then calls and tells her to open her window and that she's going to fly up, so Rachel calls room service again and reorders the salad. These small bits of dialogue really bring the series up a notch. This is attention to detail from a literary standpoint. You can tell that these books are made with love. Anyway, Rachel tells Cassie the truth about how she fell through her kitchen ceiling, but she kind of downplays it by saying that she was probably just sleep morphing, which Cassie points out is definitely not a thing, prompting Rachel to admit that she has no idea how or why, but that she fully lost control of her morphing ability, and ultimately wound up morphing Elephant completely against her will. Cassie suggests that they talk to Axe, and Rachel agrees under the condition that they do not tell Jake because he will force Rachel to sit out on missions until she gets her act together, which we know Rachel simply cannot tolerate. The conversation then turns to JJ, who Cassie has found out is... God, Gosh, cello. The indirect object with the who and the whom. I should just say who every time. The conversation then turns to JJ, who Cassie has found out is staying on some yacht in town in advance of his talk show appearance. The rest of the gang has decided that scoping out this yacht in an attempt to figure out if JJ is a controller or not is probably their next best move. Or their best next move. End of chapter. The next day, Rachel catches some flack at school from people making fun of her for falling through the floor or falling into the crocodile pit or being attention-seeking. But it doesn't seem to affect her too much, and by lunch, people are leaving her alone. I appreciate that in a lot of YA books, the derision of a character's cohort would be a much bigger deal, but Rachel is just not the kind of character to let others laugh at her expense. Towards the end of the school day, Chapman calls Rachel into his office, ostensibly to check on her after her eventful day, but he soon starts asking her about her grades. Rachel says it's just, you know, the trauma and all from her parents' divorce, which made me laugh out loud on this reread because psychological trauma is a term that is thrown around a ton now. Respect to Rachel for being ahead of her time there. Chapman then segues into a pitch for the sharing, saying that when he saw how collected and capable Rachel was on the news, he thought she'd be a really good fit for their local chapter, of which he happens to be the head. Chapman then alludes to the possibility that Rachel didn't just fall into the crocodile pit, that maybe she jumped on purpose, not to save some kid, but because she was trying to off herself. I miss this on every previous reread, but my goodness, this really shows us the depths that the yeerks will sink to in order to take advantage of people's vulnerabilities. Chapman saw this news spot and was like, Rachel's grades are slipping, and her parents just got divorced. Maybe she's depressed. I bet in her traumatized state, she'd be way receptive to the idea of, you know, becoming a part of something bigger. I should try to get her to join the sharing so that I can infest her with the yeerk. I don't think it was until this very moment that I fully appreciated how evil the sharing is. It's not just a vehicle for forwarding the invasion and maybe getting some volunteer controllers. It is an organization that specifically targets vulnerable children, people who have been through a lot of trauma, people who don't have a lot to live for. It promises them freedom and it gives them slavery. So Chapman's going through his little pitch when Rachel feels herself starting to morph grizzly bear. For some reason, it's just her legs that are morphing, and as Chapman rambles on, Rachel turns into a grizzly bear from the knee down. Chapman wraps up and dismisses her, and thinking quickly, Rachel grabs the remnants of her shoes, shoves them like behind her back or something, and stands up. Chapman obviously stares at her giant furry paws as she leaves, but Rachel tells him that they are her new boots, and he believes her. Probably one of the goofier ways that the Animorphs have skirted disaster, but I don't hate it. It is probably safe to say that Chapman does not suspect her though, because if there were even a hint of suspicion that Rachel was an Andalite bandit, I do not think that this bear boot ruse would have gotten by him. Rachel goes to the gym for her gym shoes, her feet back to normal, shaking even more than she shook after she fell into the crocodile pit, because all a crocodile can do is kill you, but the yeerks can do far worse. And they can. Here's your reminder that the fate that you suffer under the yeerks is to live the rest of your life, decades and decades, without any control over your body, while everyone else thinks that you are your usual self. The more I think about it, the more terrible it seems. I like my life, and I love my family, and it would be so awful if I just didn't get to participate anymore and they didn't even know. It's like dying and no one mourns you and no one even knows that you're dead. Ugh, gosh. So Rachel chooses not to tell the Animorphs what happened or ask Axe about her little problem in advance of their next mission, because she reasons that since only her feet morphed this time, she must be getting better. She's pretty aware that she is just rationalizing a poor decision, but the one thing that Rachel can't stand is not being a part of the action. She calls her dad and tells him that she will be hanging out with Cassie all afternoon as a cover story, and we get that sporadic reminder that the Animorphs' relationship with their parents are also a casualty of this war. The gang is all meeting at the beach for their mission, so Rachel morphs Seagull to meet Tobias in the sky and fly over there with him. She loses control of the morph for a few minutes, which is not typical since she's done Seagull morph before, but she reassures herself that this definitely has nothing to do with the crocodile issue. How could it? She's getting better. The gang convenes at the beach, all seagulls except Axe, who is a harrier, and Tobias points out JJ's boat. The gang embarks on their mission, and there's some fun dialogue surrounding JJ's appearance, with his lips being compared to those of Brad Pitt, and Marco claiming that in Brad Pitt's last movie his lips crushed someone to death, and Jake claiming that Brad Pitt's lips are all full of butt fat. They arrive at the yacht, and JJ is there, causing Rachel and Cassie to become starstruck and recite facts about him in thought speak. Rachel and Cassie fly closer while the rest of the gang keeps watch, and they are able to make out the conversation he is having with what seems to be a TV producer. The producer is warning JJ that his teen heartthrob phase won't last forever, and that he has an idea to get JJ some serious adult roles in movies. JJ likes the sound of this since he is absolutely sick of his clean image, and apparently he hates his fans, especially the ones who love him. The more they love him, the more he hates them. A little on the nose, perhaps, but I do appreciate the sentiment. As the producer guy continues to pitch JJ on his idea for JJ's future, he reveals that he is in fact a representative from the sharing, and at this point he turns around, giving the Animorphs a closer look. And it's Visser 3 and Human Morph. Their conversation wraps up with JJ agreeing to let Visser 3 do the procedure on him if the Visser promises to make him a major movie star. With this, Rachel and Cassie decide to fly back to the rest of the Animorphs, but Rachel suddenly starts morphing Elephant again, directly from Seagull Morph, causing her to fall out of the sky. She lands in the water and continues morphing, sinking as she does so. As she panics, Axe joins her in Shark Morph. Cassie and Jake quickly assume Dolphin Morphs in an attempt to save her, but by this point Rachel has gone directly from Elephant Morph to Ant Morph. Fortunately, she finds an air bubble and is no longer drowning. Unfortunately, she is now an ant lost in the ocean without an ability to control her morphs. She tries to focus on becoming human, but before she knows it, she is back in Crocodile Morph. As this is happening, Marco notes that Visser 3 has demorphed and seems to be prepared to jump into the water. Once submerged, the Visser morphs into a Lebtin javelin fish. Rather than describe it, I will throw some fan art onto the screen while I talk about this next part. So JJ sees the Visser morph, by the way, and is yelling about how cool the Visser is, which really drives home that JJ is a garbage person who is happy to betray his species in return for some personal gain. The Animorphs try to escape, but the Visser starts shooting spears at them from his spiky back, which paralyze the Animorphs when they are hit. Rachel is immediately struck by one, paralyzing her tail and immobilizing her. The Visser approaches Rachel, who just lays there, still, acting like she can't move at all, but when he gets closer, she bites him. The Visser had kind of puffed himself up by sucking in a bunch of water in order to propel the spears out of him, and when Rachel takes a bite out of him, he reacts kind of like a balloon that hasn't been tied, flying all around the ocean uncontrollably up into the air and then landing far enough away from them that the Animorphs are able to escape. I would like to point out that the book doesn't clearly state how the Visser knew that the Animorphs were down there, so it's very probable, that he saw Rachel morph directly from Seagull to Elephant and may have some questions about that. It's never really addressed again, though. Later, in the woods behind Cassie's barn, Axe tells Rachel that he believes she has acquired an animal that she is allergic to. It happens sometimes, apparently. The group determines that it was probably the crocodile morph that Rachel's allergic to, and Axe tells them that Rachel will continue to experience these episodes, which he equates to sort of sneezes, but I think they're like morph seizures, honestly, until some grand event at which point she will expel the DNA from her. It's called a Hereth Illant, and apparently when the expulsion happens, the crocodile DNA will manifest in the form of a copy of the actual crocodile Rachel acquired. I wonder what would have happened if Axe had been allergic to the human morph when he tried to acquire the Animorphs. He would have had to Hereth Illant them, and then there would either be a clone of Axe's human morph walking around, or an entirely new set of Animorphs. This is a great idea for a fan fiction. I don't know that I am equipped to write it, but if anyone wants to do so, please, you have my blessing, steal the idea. It's a great idea. Imagine. Anyway, Axe says that Rachel needs to calm down because the episodes only happen when she gets upset or is otherwise aroused. Of course, Cassie is able to infer that this means that one of the episodes happened while Rachel was looking at pictures of JJ online, which Marco makes fun of Rachel for. I also found this very funny. Unfortunately, Jake tells Rachel that she's not allowed to go to school and definitely not allowed to go on this talk show until she burps out the crocodile DNA, since the yeerks are certainly suspicious after the weird confrontation at the yacht. This infuriates Rachel, who hates to miss a mission and also probably has a little bit of hurt pride over the JJ situation and is wanting to get back at him, and Jake gives Rachel a really stern talking to. Like, the book says that he gives her a cold look and his smile evaporates. He tells her that it's her fault that Visser 3 even knows that they're there, that she should have let them know that she wasn't in shape to handle the mission, and Rachel doesn't even argue because she knows that Jake is right. I love this moment for Jake, by the way. I wonder if he gets a moment like this with each of the characters. I'm gonna keep my eye out for it. I hope so. I know he has many of them with Axe, obviously. Jake, for all of his talk of not choosing to be the leader, has certainly become comfortable telling the other Animorphs what to do and chastising them for putting missions and their safety and humanity in jeopardy. Anyway, this is a Rachel book, so we will focus on Rachel. Rachel decides that her best course of action is to lie and tell Cassie and Jake that she had the Hereth Illant and is feeling fine now, reasoning that they can't afford to to let JJ and the Yeerks succeed in their alliance, so her lie isn't really that big of a deal. Plus, she'll definitely be able to keep her emotions in check, because it's really easy to go on a TV show for the first time. So Rachel gets there, joined by Cassie, still human, while the rest of the group assumes innocent morphs and tries to get into the building. Importantly, they see that there will be another guest on the show that day, a man who apparently brings wild animals onto talk shows. Cassie does not approve of him, so we, the readers, know that he is bad. Rachel gets to hair and makeup and immediately gets mad at the hairdresser for dressing her hair and starts morphing into Wolf. She's able to pull herself together before anything catastrophic happens, but Cassie now knows that Rachel lied. You know, now that I think about it, it is even worse for Jake that he gave this whole speech to Rachel and Rachel still didn't listen to him. This directly undermines his leadership. I think from like a certain standpoint, he kind of has to punish her, but I know that he doesn't. Anyway, they encounter Marco in Llama-morph and debrief him on the Rachel situation. Deciding that they'll need a backup Rachel, Cassie acquires Rachel's DNA in a kind of pushy way, to be honest. Consent issues at play here. Pretty soon the show is starting, and Rachel gets directions from some stagehand kind of lady while she and the rest of the guests convene next to the set. As the show begins, Rachel starts to feel weird and realizes that she is having the Harith Illant right there on stage. Of course this is what happened. So Rachel feels kind of sick, and then the crocodile's mind surfaces really strong and takes over Rachel's body, causing her to attack JJ before Cassie pulls her away and takes her to the bathroom. The writing here is pretty good, actually, and I encourage you guys to just read the book rather than relying on this summary, as usual. In that spirit, I will not go into great detail about the DNA expulsion process, just know that it's good. Rachel expels the crocodile, simultaneously morphing Grizzly Bear as Cassie morphs Squirrel to try to stay out of harm. The crocodile attacks, Cassie goes for the eyes, and some lady opens up the bathroom door. Chaos ensues, and ultimately the Animorphs are in a standoff with the crocodile, with JJ looking on, and Andalite Axe lurking in the shadows off camera. Cassie manages to kill the lights, some slapstick ensues, and Llama Marco somehow kicks JJ in the back, right into the crocodile's path. A yeerk then exits JJ's brain, and Axe steps out of the shadows and murders the crocodile with his tail blade in an absolutely awesome scene. They go on and on about how Rachel and Grizzly Bear morph, the most powerful thing that the group can possibly get together, cannot fight this crocodile, but Axe just comes in and murks him. Totally sick. As Rachel runs away, she feels herself step on the yeerk. Rachel demorphs and finds Cassie, who has morphed Rachel and is talking to one of the show's producers. Cassie is doing a good job of playing Rachel, and as she walks away, the producer yells "Andalite" at her, probably trying to test her and see if she reacts in any way, but Cassie handles it with aplomb. Cassie and Rachel have some fun dialogue about how Jake is probably gonna be mad, end scene. 2 weeks later, the entire group is in Rachel's hotel room and they see a news spot on Entertainment Tonight that says that JJ just got out of the mental hospital and has moved to Uzbekistan. They believe that this is probably as far as he could get from the yeerks and the media, and I think I probably would want to move to an island somewhere rather than Uzbekistan, but that is just me. Anyway, Rachel and Cassie fawn over JJ a little bit more, the boys change the channel to Baywatch, and the book ends. So let's deconstruct. I think the reaction here is obviously about the allergic reaction Cassie had to the crocodile morph. I don't think it goes much deeper than that. I am gonna go ahead and give this book a 6 for plot. There's definitely a lot of and then storytelling going on in this one. It's very plotty. The book also hits a new height for Animorphs doing things that should have gotten them caught, with Rachel's grizzly bear feet in Chapman's office, her uncontrollable morphing in front of Visser 3 during the Yacht mission, the entire final act where Axe is just fully demorphed in a TV studio. You have to suspend your disbelief quite a bit in this one, or at least kind of blur the lines of what you think is reasonable. I'm not opposed to doing it. This is a science fiction young adult, it's a middle grade science fiction novel about aliens that control people's heads. I'm not trying to make it adhere to total realism here. I'm just pointing out that relative to the books that we've read so far, there is quite a bit of this. As far as the TV studio is going, I suppose that in the 90s they were still using film, so the cameras probably weren't on all the time like they are now, but you gotta think at least one of the cameras might have been running, right? Or that there might have been security cameras in the TV studio, but the book says that there weren't, so I guess that there weren't. Anyway, the book gets a 4 for significance. I think this is the first book that we've read so far where nothing supremely important happens. Yes, the Animorphs foil a yeerk plot, but that's kind of par for the course. We don't really learn anything new other than that it is possible to be allergic to a morph. For character, I will be giving this book a 6. It is kind of standard Rachel stuff. I'm sorry. If you disagree, please let me know down below, but Rachel's not my favorite character, I think. Cassie has become my favorite character, or at least one of them in my adult life, but Rachel hasn't really had that journey for me yet. Maybe it'll change. Anyway, this book kind of just reiterates that Rachel loves excitement, she gets FOMO. If, for instance, she had learned in this book that it's totally unacceptable to lie to her friends and to jeopardize missions, if she'd actually sat the battle out, or come to terms with the fact that she is not invincible, or that there are more important things than simply being present every time there's a chance of violence, maybe I would feel differently. It is cool that we got that little bit of insight about her not being immune to fear, though. Another thing that I liked about how this book characterizes Rachel is the fact that she also wasn't immune to JJ's charms. You'd think that the fearless, powerful Rachel wouldn't fall for the teen heartthrob that everyone else is obsessed with, but she does. And I appreciate this because it signals to us, the readers, that Rachel is still just a teenager. She may be the cudgel of the group, she may be the boogeyman for so many yeerks, she may be extremely violent and dangerous, but she is a teen who, in spite of anything else, is prone to all of the same predilections that regular teens are. We'll give the writing here an 8 because it is still KA, she's doing her thing, and this leaves the book with a final score of 5.9 out of 10, putting it at number 12 of the 12 books we've read so far. Guess what number 11 is? It's The Stranger, the last Rachel book that we read. I know that I remember some Rachel books fondly, so I don't think this is going to be the case for every Rachel book that we read. Plus, I liked The Stranger. It just gets kind of bogged down by having very little development for Rachel. I know that she has an arc. I know where the series takes her. I'm sure there will be redeeming Rachel books in the future. This one just didn't 100% do it for me. But still, we're going to get through this series, and there are going to be some filler books that definitely fall far below this one, so we'll see what happens, I guess. Anyway, that is it. You are all dismissed. Thank you very much for watching again. Yeah, maybe like and subscribe. If you don't want to, you don't have to, though. I'm really much more about just creating content for the sake of doing something I love than anything else. So just know that I very much appreciate every single one of you.